here, basically there's a, need to replace the bearing. Hear how noisy that is. That's what I'm hearing. Alright, this is the hub and spindle assembly. This piece right here is spindle, and right here is the hub, and I need to replace a wheel bearing in here. So, you know, this pretty much sits on the vehicle pretty much like this. Like, there's a where the lateral bolt goes through in the bottom, and then up here, this is where like the strut, the bottom of the strut wraps around. So you can take this whole assembly out. In the back here, this is like where the like the rear axle assembly comes in, and there's some seals here. And you can see, hopefully we can see here. I'll kind of point it out. Looks like it's a little hard to see in the camera here, but try and focus a little bit. Sorry about this. Okay, so like this is the wheel bearing. This is the outer race. You know, this piece here is the outer race of the wheel bearing. And then this piece is the inner race of the wheel bearing. There's a gap here between this outer race and the bottom of this seal. There's actually two seals in here. There's a inner seal and an outer seal. And if we come look at, you know, the diagram from the service, so we're looking at, so here's the spindle. Mine looks a little different just because there's this, you know, it's the spindle, but there's this backing plate on here that like the parking brake cable goes through and like the brake shoes mount to. So you know, that's why it looks a little different than the diagram. But here's the spindle, and then there's this inner seal and this outer seal, and then like the whole bearing assembly is in there as well. The bearing assembly has to come out in the opposite direction, so we have to push this we have to push the hub out. This pretty much stays attached, but we'll probably need to take it off later. We'll get to that. There's a seal here, and then this is actually like a clip ring. We can't see any of this right now because, you know, because this whole assembly is together. So there's a seal somewhere in here, and on this side there's a seal. Let's see, there's a seal kind of like in here. You know, this is pressed together, so like here's the hub, there's a seal, and then like inside this area here there's like a clip which keeps the bearing in, and then the bearing goes this way, and then on the other side, this is what we can see, we've got the other two seals. And I just wanted to show this seal. The outer seal is kind of like it's got like a curve that goes it's like dished that goes in, and that's because on when the axle comes in, that's the metal on the axle is tapered, so it fits really nice with this and seals, right? So obviously we don't want any water or anything coming in here. And then there's a gap. It's hard to see, but there's a gap here, and then the inner seal is here. So I'm going to pull these out, and we'll take it from there. There's one. This inner one. That's two. Okay, so both seals are out. Here's what the inner seal looks like. And this grooved part, you can see one part is flat, one part is grooved. They don't really show you on the diagram, you know, exactly how this is oriented. It's kind of, even the seal looks like kind of different on the diagram. You know, we're looking at this one here, and this is what it looks like sort of in real life. It's got a groove, but anyway, that groove goes down like this, and this thing sits right down here. Right down in this area right here. There's like a little lip, a machined lip. And the other one sits right up here. So the top one actually sits right up here. So you can see this space here is basically the gap between the two that I was talking about. Right here. There's a gap. So the top one sits here, the bottom one sits here. And now you can see like all the old crusty grease that's in here. So I'm going to be pushing out the hub. Now in order to do that, I'm going to push on this piece here. This is part of the hub assembly. This is the inner race, like a socket or something that sits right on this lip, right here. And just to push this out and not push on this part. If we push on this part, it's not going to work right now because there's a retaining ring on the other side right here that's preventing this whole bearing assembly from coming out. So we don't want to do that. We just want to push on this part, which is the hub, part of the hub. Okay, so I'm set up on my press, and we're going to be pushing, you know, right where I was showing before. So let me I just got a couple of sockets here. This one happens to be 26 millimeters, and it seemed to fit really well on here without touching, you know, the bearing race. So just on the hub part. Alright, so I got the assembly, you can see, kind of propped up here. I want to push the hub out from the back of the spindle. So here it goes. Hoping this wood kind of holds up. If it doesn't, I may need to do something a little more sturdy. Okay. That seemed to be it. Alright, we got some more wood. Wish I had something a little better here, but yeah, this is definitely a little bit precarious. Alright, that's it. Pop through. See the bearing there. Looks like some crud in there. We'll get that out, take a little better look. Okay, so now the hub assembly is out, and we can see that, you know, half of the bearing, one side of the bearing is still on here. And this is pressed on, so it's not going to easily come off. And then this is the inner race of the bearings. What we have to get off is, well, first of all, there's a seal in here, so that has to come off. But before we can get that off, this bearing part we can basically just rip off, and then we have to get this sleeve off. Now there's two ways to do that. There's a bearing separator tool that you can buy. I don't have that, so I'm just going to use an air hammer actually to get that off. So this thing here is the ABS toner ring, so we want to be careful of that. We're actually going to take this off before we use the air hammer to get this piece off, but we just want to be careful not to bend this or anything. But you can see this thing is pretty weak, so we can just basically, we're just going to pry this off. The oil's all, or the grease that was in there is all pretty dark, dirty, definitely older. Alright, so now that's off. Okay, so now that the toner ring is off, that went here, now I can get a good grip on this in the vise. You can see I've got the hub gripped with the vise, and you know, there's a nice ridge here on the old bearing race that I can hit with my air hammer. Okay, so now that the bearing, the inner race is off, that's what this is. And I did that just by buzzing it off with the air hammer. Just putting my chisel right into this groove. Now, this seal comes off as well. And this seal is the one that goes here, and we can also see on the spindle assembly that there is a ring, the snap ring here. So this guy, we gotta get this guy off. Right in here. This comes, gotta pull that out. So I'm gonna clean this up with the, get the grease out of there, because we still have to push this this bearing race out. Once we get this ring out, we push it up through this way. Alright, now that I've cleaned this up a little bit, I think we can see here's the snap ring. And you can see I just got a little screwdriver in there, and I'm able to just kind of pry it up. On the end of it, near the gap, is a little slot where you can stick a screwdriver in. And there we go. And that's holding this the outer race, which is right here, of the bearing into the spindle assembly. So now from the other side, from this side, we can press this out. And I'll probably just put something right on this inner bearing race surface, since we don't, this thing it's not going to be reused, so not worried about destroying it, and push it out. Find a socket that fits here and push it down through. Okay, so I'm set up. I got a 41mm socket in here this time, and just a couple spacers, take up some slack. And again, I'm kind of supported on a couple blocks of wood, and we're going to push through the back of the spindle. pushing through. Okay, so we pushed it out. I haven't cleaned this up yet, but it came out this way. This is that groove where the retaining ring was. We had to remove that, and we pushed from the other side, and this came out. And then here's the outer race. Now the nice thing about this outer race is that here's the new bearing. When we install the new bearing, we don't want to push on this inner race. If we do, we'll basically ruin the bearing. So what's nice is we can take the old and use this in the press. It fits perfectly, obviously, to push on the outer race and drive this in. So I'm going to clean this up, and I'm going to push this bearing in. This time we're going to push from this direction. We're going to push this way, and we're just going to set it right in until we bottom it out on this ridge here. Alright, I've cleaned this guy up, and so here's how this is going to go. Here's the new bearing. So that guy's going to go right there. This little plastic in here, you want to leave that in there. That helps keep these two sort of like inner races and the bearings attached to them kind of together. And again, we don't ever want to push on the inner piece here. So cleaned up the old race, outer race, and as you can see, it lines up nice. Perfect. Okay, so I'm set up on the press. I got a couple bars of steel here, just kind of bracing the bottom part of the spindle so I can press. Here's the new bearing. It just kind of falls into place, at least to this height. Here's the old race that I'm going to press down on. This is just a metal spacer I had and a couple metal plates that came with the press. And getting pressed into place. This is like no effort on this press here right now. A little bit of resistance now. I'm groaning a little bit. Okay, now we got this. That feels about it. That's tight. So we're going to stop there. Okay, so the bearing is pressed in. We can see that it's basically right above the groove where the snap ring goes. Snap ring goes right in there. That's this guy. So I'm just going to clip him in. And I'm not going to do the seals yet on this. I'm going to press the hub in first from the other side. And then we'll do these side seals. Okay, we're going to want to press this seal in. Again, the grooved part goes in. We got to get this in because our hub assembly is going to come down, and we won't be able to get this on after we start pressing in the hub assembly. So this side seal has to go in. Don't forget to put the toner ring back on the hub before you press it in. So doing that now, and I'm just putting a little bit of anti-seize on these bolts, and these bolts that go through. Okay, a couple of important things here. Again, remember to put your toner ring on, because once you press this, you won't be able to. So I've got the spindle here and the hub here, and what we want to do, we want to make sure that we press the spindle onto the hub, and we don't want to, you know, press on these studs, the wheel studs. So I've just got a socket that fits in here on a steel plate, so that this is supported, and then, you know, this is the hub, the seal is in. You know, make sure you get this one seal in, and then I've just got a socket. In this case, we do want to press on the bearing, the inner bearing race in this case, because we're trying to press the bearing onto the hub. If we were to just press on the spindle, the bearing would actually start to pop back through. So that's what we're going to do. I got some oil here on the hub. Help it come together. That's it. Okay, so the hub is pressed back onto the spindle. You can see how much the hub itself, you know, kind of where it lands with the inner bearing race. It's not totally flush, but it comes up, you know, pretty close to the lip there. And at this point, we're ready to put in these two seals here. And we'll be ready to put it back on the car. Alright, we got the inner seal, so this will be going down here like that. And then the outer seal, which is this guy, will be going like this. Just a little bit of, just a tad bit of oil there, just to help it slide in. Again, the grooved part, the deep groove, goes down. Alright, that's sitting down in there. There is a little bit of a gap that's supposed to be there between this outer, this bearing surface and the seal. There's supposed to be just a little bit of a gap there, which there is. Now this guy goes like this, and actually the groove goes out on this one, but the taper part goes in. And this one goes right like this. I've just got a big socket here that seems to fit really well. This guy, actually for this one I can use this guy, it looks like fits a little better.